Well, good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
Yes, let's do that again. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Oh, I love that. A lovely warm welcome. I'm Mitzi, Lynton. I'm the Vice President of the Arizona Interfaith Movement, and it is my pleasure to be the moderator for our October Faith Forum. And today's topic is war ever holy? Throughout time immemorial, political and military leaders have called upon God to vanquish their enemies. But is killing others ever justified, especially in the name of God or one's country? Should the individual participate in war if it goes against his faith and beliefs? Who has the higher authority, God or government? Today we have 5 distinguished panelists from various faith traditions who are going to discuss this topic. And I'll introduce each one with their bios separately as they begin to speak. But I do want to let you know their names just briefly right now. We have Reuven Mann, an Orthodox Jewish rabbi at Young Israel of Phoenix Synagogue. Clayton on the end, who is a Mennonite. Shahid, a Muslim. George Nakamura, SGI Buddhist. And Manbir, Wazir, who is a Sikh. So you can see that we have a very diverse and wonderful panel to join us this morning. So to begin, we're going to ask Rabbi Reuven Mann to start. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about him. He is an Orthodox Jewish rabbi at Young Israel of Phoenix Synagogue. Rabbi Reuven Mann has been a pulpit rabbi and Jewish educator for the past 40 years. He's taught Bible, Talmud, and Jewish philosophy to post-high school students studying to be ordained as spiritual leaders and Jewish educators. He founded a school for women who were seeking to partake of advanced Judaic studies called Nakamura. He is currently the spiritual leader of Young Israel of Phoenix and gives numerous weekly classes of all aspects of Judaism, which are open to the public. So please help me welcome Rabbi Reuven Mann.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I would like to do my best to elucidate the attitude of Judaism towards matters of killing, towards matters of war. It's not a simplistic attitude. It's a bit nuanced. And first and foremost, to orient you, the attitude towards war, I think, is rooted in the attitude of Judaism towards the issue of self-defense. Bear in mind, many people quote from the 10 Commandments. They quote the 6th commandment, but it's a misquote. You have to study the Bible in Hebrew. They quote it as saying, "Thou shalt not kill." And from there they go on to make deductions that any killing is wrong. But if you do it in Hebrew, there's a different word. The word in Hebrew is tirtzach. Thou shalt not murder. There's a difference between killing, and killing can be legitimate in certain circumstances, as opposed to murder. Murder means where the act of killing is for no justifiable purpose, purely for some benefit that you seek to gain for yourself. Judaism believes very strongly in the right of people to defend themselves, and not just themselves. If someone is coming to kill you, the rabbis say, get up and kill him first. That would even imply the doctrine of preemption. The Bible, the Torah. When I say the Torah, I'm talking about the 5 books of Moses that we regard as being divine. Thou shalt not stand idly by the blood of your brother. In other words, If someone else is being, not just yourself, you obviously have a right to defend yourself, but this right, this obligation extends to other people as well. It's not just you. If you come upon another individual who's in dire straits, who needs help, and you just go by, you have committed a sin. Because since you could have saved that person, you stood idly by. Failing to save a life is akin to killing another individual. Even if you have to use force, you are obligated to do so. Now, if you can use force and stop the person without killing him, then you don't have a right to kill him. But let's say the situation is such, you're being attacked, and you just shoot. You can't aim in that situation. You got a shotgun, whatever the case is. So you're not intentionally killing him, but that's the only way. If you killed that person because you had to do so to defend yourself or any other person, then you have committed a good deed. Our word for a good deed is a mitzvah, literally a commandment. That's something that God wants you to do. So you see, the sacredness of defending life goes to the extent that it obligates you to take the life of the attacker who's attacking for no legitimate purpose. Now, if you go to the Bible, you'll see the greatest people in the Bible, they were great. For example, Moses. What did Moses do when he saw the Egyptian killing the Jews? Well, he got up and he killed him. And then later on, if you're familiar with the story, the daughters of Yitro, they were being bullied by the shepherds. He didn't kill them, but he got up to defend them. Defending the innocent is considered a great, great deed. And if necessary, you don't just go around killing. But if the only way to do so is by killing, not only are you permitted to do so, you're obligated to do so, and that is considered to be a great good deed. Thus you find wars of self-defense. Judaism not only permits, but obligates you to fight a war of self-defense. And thus I regard the wars that Israel, modern Israel, has fought against the Arabs in the current era, essentially they are wars of self-defense because the Arabs openly proclaim that their goal is to destroy the Jewish people, the Jewish state. But you see that God participates in war. The story, I don't know if you saw the movie, The Ten Commandments. It's a little bit before your time, not mine. But the splitting of the Red Sea and the destruction of the Egyptian army who had come to obliterate the Jewish people. And then Moses sang a song. Hashem means God. God is a man of war. So God allows himself to be depicted as a man of war. That's a righteous cause, defending the innocent against the wicked. That's one type of a war. There's another type of war. I'm not really going to be using the term holy war or not holy war. We don't regard that as being the ultimate ideal, that I participated in a holy war and that then I get a ticket to go straight to heaven. That's not the way we look at it. It's kind of like a necessity sometimes. But there is another concept besides self-defense. How many of you have heard the term Amalek? Have you ever heard the word Amalek? Amalek. Okay. Amalek is the nation that attacked the Jews when they left Egypt for no purpose. Simply because their purpose was to glorify man and to destroy the idea of God that the Jewish people carried with them as a result of receiving God's law at Mount Sinai. The concept of Amalek, and that was Saul was commanded to fight that war. The concept of Amalek, however, extends to any nation that shall arise and proclaim itself to be the masters of the universe, and in the course of that endeavor to dictate and to wipe out complete peoples or races that they deem to be inferior races, because they're the Aryans, they're the super people. Now, of course, it's not just the Nazis, but they're the best example of all. The Nazis would be a modern representation of the nation of Amalek. Thus, it would be a great deed. If you want to call it a holy war, call it a holy war. You would be obligated to destroy, that would be evil. That would be a war which is being done to destroy evil. Because that's what they stand for. And thus, for example, America, in my opinion, if you wanted to join the army during World War II because you want to destroy Nazism, according to Jewish law, you're fulfilling a great good deed. You want to call it holy? Call it. In fact, God says it's a war of God against Amalek. Because as long as these nations exist, the name of God cannot be magnified in the world. When evil triumphs, then people say, well, there is no God. And then they lean towards adopting these fascistic, not the communists as well, that same atheistic type of an approach.
1 minute.
Oh, 1 minute. But we count time differently. So, never tell a rabbi 1 minute. I'll end it. I just want to end it by saying that even though, in these circumstances, engaging in war is considered to be a noble thing, still that's not our ultimate goal. The ultimate vision of Judaism is when the entire world will be united in peace. That is the vision of the Messianic era, where it says, nation will not lift sword against nation, neither will they learn war no more. Why? Because the entire world will be filled with the knowledge of God. When people recognize God, have a knowledge of God, and are humble and want to serve God, then that automatically creates a love and a respect for all people who are created in the image of God. That's our vision of peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I love that. I love the ending. The whole world united in peace. Wonderful information there. And you do have 7 minutes to speak, each panelist. I failed to mention that at the beginning, and I will give you a 1-minute warning. And from that view, we go now to Clayton Bender, who is a Mennonite. He attended Iowa Mennonite High School and Mennonite College in Heston, Kansas. After he married, he began farming, then attended Mennonite voluntary service and alternate service for almost 3 years at La Huna Mennonite Hospital, which included some migrant outreach. 3 years X-ray training followed at Presbyterian Medical Center, Denver, Colorado. Later, he became a hospital administrator in Kansas, followed by employment as executive director of a residential and educational program for residents severely handicapped people in Maumee, Ohio. He then became a founding board member, then the founding executive director of Adopt America, Toledo, Ohio, that serves the entire nation. He and his wife, Susan, now reside in Prescott Valley, Arizona. Peace studies and related involvements have been constant throughout his life. So please help me welcome Clayton Bender.
I was reading last night about midnight, an interesting thing that sort of, I was half asleep and it woke me up. It was by a person that every one of you are acquainted with today. The statement was, killing in the name of God is always blasphemy, by Pope Francis. So I'm not a Catholic, but it was sort of striking to hear him say that. Also, I just sort of relaxed just a minute and say, reminds me of the rather rural, small congregation that was very hang loose kind of thing, we'd say. And he got up in the morning at the sermon and said, today I was going to talk about the status quo. The leading deacon stood up and said, wait a minute, preacher. Before we get started, what's the status quo? And he said, well, that's the mess we's all in together. And I think that's the whole issue of war. That's the mess we's in together. You can't say a time when there wasn't war. But I would like to start with just a summary of some statements from the Mennonite Church. And I've got some documents here in case you want to follow up, and especially one that you can look up on the internet if you have the fun to do this. We believe that peace is the will of God. God created the world in peace, and God's peace is more fully revealed in Jesus Christ, who is our peace and the peace of the whole world. Led by the Holy Spirit, we follow Christ in the way of peace, doing justice, bringing reconciliation, and practicing non-resistance, even in the face of violence and welfare. Although God created a peaceable world, humanity chose the way of unrighteousness and violence. The spirit of revenge increased and violence multiplied, yet the original vision of peace and justice did not die. Prophets and other messengers of God continued to point the people of Israel toward trust in God rather than in weapons. As followers of Christ, we participate in his peace and justice. He has called us to find our blessing in making peace and justice. We do so in the spirit of gentleness, willing to be persecuted for righteousness' sake. As disciples of Christ, we do not prepare for war nor participate in war or military service. That same spirit empowered Jesus, who empowers us to love our enemies, to forgive rather than to seek vengeance and practice righteous relationships. That's all sort of cold facts that is sort of the basis of our living. As a young man, I had to finally come to a place in my own pilgrimage after I threw Jesus out with the baby with the bathwater, and as I came back through a sort of a rough pilgrimage, I finally came to the place where I said, I am a proud member of the United States. I don't know why I was born here. I haven't a clue. I don't know, any of us do. I also have a profoundly retarded daughter. I don't know why I was born with a fairly high IQ, even though my high school teachers would question that. But the fact is, I came to the place where I said, at any time, I will die for my country, but under no circumstances, under any circumstances, will I kill for my country. That's not an easy position to come to, and it's not Pollyanna. But I would like to just suggest that the whole idea of non-resistance has the connotation of negative. But we need to be proactive if we're going to be anything at all. Therefore, when I had been in a farm accident and was declared a 4F, which means I did not need to participate in the Army, I went for my physical and contested that, and I think several of the doctors thought I needed mental help, because I felt deeply that I cannot just sit by while our country is being protected. And so I got an exemption and went into voluntary service working in healthcare, and especially with migrant work. Back then we called them wetbacks. And it was a whole new world for me to get out of a small Mennonite community. But I'd like to point out that if you were raised Amish or Mennonite, which is part of the Anabaptist, every person, every kid, by the time you get to grade school, knows about Dirk Willems from 1569. The details in Netherlands will tell us about his capture and death. Dirk was caught and tried and convicted as an Anabaptist in those later years of harsh Spanish rule under the Duke of Alva in the Netherlands. He escaped from the residential palace and turned into a prison by letting himself out of the window with a rope made of knotted rags, dropping onto the ice that covered the castle. Seeing him escape, the palace guard pursued him as he fled. Dirk crossed the thin ice of a pond safely. His own weight was very light because he had a very reduced prison rations. His heavier pursuer broke through the ice, and hearing the guard call for help, Dirk turned back and rescued him. The less than grateful guard seized Dirk and led him back to captivity. This time, at the top of the castle, he was there in wooden leg stocks, which are even there today if you were to visit that little town, and he was led out and burnt to death. Following Christ does not mean victory. That's the beginning and end of it, and I will simply mention several things about relatives that I have or personal friends that are trying to live this out in a positive way. Nevin and Esther Bender were Mennonite pastors in Delaware, and at the early part of the civil rights movement started a mission church in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The church was twice knocked down through bombing and was rebuilt. Titus Bender and his wife served through Mennonite Central Committee, which is a arm of the church that reaches throughout the world in 50 to 60 countries. Over 60% of the workers have nothing to do with the Mennonites, but want to be a part of the peace position. And because of that, they served 3 years in Vietnam, clearing minefields after the Vietnam conflict. Earl and Pat Hostetter, dear friends of ours, were via MCC Neutral Canada in the Vietnam War, ministered daily for about 3 years to war victims on both sides, both North and South Vietnam. Ed Martin, who was one of the neat youth kids in my youth group in our church, ended up heading up a team going to I got my last 1 minute, to northern Iran, where this team was planning to open some health and educational facilities for young people, both male and female, and in the process spent a whole day with the Ayatollah in northern Iran. Expecting to talk about the details, the Ayatollah said, I really don't worry about that, we can get to that later, but tell me about Anabaptists, tell me about the peace position, and Menno Simons. And so they spent the majority of the day talking about that. At the end of the discussion, they did a few details, and then he said, now Ed, the rest of you must be out of the country within 24 hours, because unknown to you, there's going to be a war. And that was when Saddam Hussein entered Kuwait. Paul Lederach is now a part of a meditation team that's, for the last 15 years, has spent in Central and South America, mediating conflict between various religions, between various communities, and between various countries. I could go on and on with many more of those stories, but what I'm wanting to say is that following Christ does not equal victory at all costs. It does, in fact, give peace in our own hearts and believe that there's many people, not just Mennonites. If you want to talk about Bonhoeffer, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Dorothy Day, Buddhist priests, it could go on for another 10 minutes just mentioning that, but I'll bet my time's up.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Clayton. I love our panel today, so diverse and such wonderful viewpoints from everyone. So our next speaker, you know from last month, presented as well, and we're so delighted to have him back again. This is Sid Shahid. He is a Muslim and the founder and president of SAS Strategic, a consulting firm that focuses on domestic de-radicalization and counterterrorism. Sid also works in conjunction with the State Department and has had a long career in the federal government with the Department of Defense, Department of Education, and Department of Housing and Urban Development. Sid is the former Director of Research and Publications for the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. He has written many articles and been a contributor to a book on issues surrounding counterterrorism. Sid is a public speaker and is an active and involved member of the local Muslim community. He lives in the Valley but is originally from Colorado, and he's a very active member of our Arizona Interfaith Movement Board as well. Please help me welcome back Sid.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very conscious of my 7 minutes, so please do excuse me because I'm going to go at warp speed. I'll tell you right now. And again, we can certainly go back to certain issues and certainly discuss other issues that may come up. Okay. So first of all, a word of thanks to the Jewish Historical Society for having us here. This is awesome. This is very, very educational and great service that they're doing. The great Arizona Interfaith Movement, that certainly gives me the opportunity of being here. It's such a privilege to be associated with an organization that really truly focuses on building bridges of understanding and respect among faiths and people, other people. So that's certainly a very noble purpose. In case you're wondering why I'm dressed the way I am, and I'll do a little fashion show here if you haven't seen me. Today is Eid al-Adha, and that is a very big holiday in for Muslims. Basically, it signifies the holiday of the sacrifice. Basically, we are celebrating the sacrifice that Prophet Abraham intended to do for his devotion of God. So essentially, my daughter and my son are here as well, Wafa and Amir, and they're dressed accordingly because we went to our morning prayer, and of course now we're here, and then we've got some evening activities, dinner, that sort of stuff planned too. So it's a pretty big day for us. So in any case, you're probably wondering, okay, so this is almost equated to our Christmas or the holy holidays. I mean, why? This is a pretty important day. I'd like to certainly spend with my family and friends. Why am I here? Well, I think it's absolutely essential for me to really be here, and I'm very honored to be here because this concept of this holy war, and I'll refer to holy war as jihad from now on, because I know that that's the concept that's most, I guess, commonly referred to when they talk about Muslims and holy war. I think it's important for us to really come and talk about it and really let people know exactly, where, Muslims stand, with that, and we really can't allow the very, very insignificant small percentage of extremists to hijack our faith, what we're all about. A quarter of mankind is Muslim, and if we were all as crazy as the extremists, I mean, the world would have perished a long time ago. So that's not quite the case. So in any case, like I said, it's a very emotionally charged word when you hear about jihad, and of course after 9/11, the tragedy of 9/11, it's affected not only the entire world but the Muslim faith in a very, very sort of a detrimental way. And so what does exactly jihad mean? When you hear the word jihad, what does it mean? Well, the literal translation of jihad is a struggle, all right? Basically, there are two types of jihad. There's the greater jihad, which refers to the inner struggle within a person in order to fight against their nafs. Nafs is referred as inner desires of greed, selfishness, passion, that sort of thing. And basically, you have to sort of conquer your nafs in order to become a better person, or to be a more good contributor to your society and your community. So that's one aspect of jihad, which is called the greater jihad actually in our faith. There's also a concept of lesser jihad, which is actually the physical struggle against enemies. And like our sister faith of Judaism, we are only allowed to engage in war if it's a defensive struggle against oppression and persecution only. And in that case, we are not to partake in killing women and children, non-combatants, never damaging cultivated fields, not attacking residential areas. So you can certainly see, the whole concept of war, as crazy as it has gotten, this whole concept of jihad with terrorists running around killing everyone in sight and Muslims actually, they kill a lot more Muslims than they do non-Muslims, as crazy as it is. This stuff is very, very sort of last resort-ish, if I may, in Islam. So it's not something that you can just partake against. A couple of common quotes I'm just going to tell you about jihad. There's the jihad of the heart, which is concerned with combating devil in its attempt to sort of, misguide people to doing other things. So if you're doing jihad of the heart, you're sort of protecting yourself or guiding yourself against that. Jihad of the tongue, which means you're concerned about speaking the truth and spreading the word of Islam. Now, spreading the word of Islam is very different from sort of forcing people to join the faith, okay? It's basically telling about Islam. What I'm doing is I'm talking about Islam right now. So that's sort of, talking about Islam. Jihad by hand, it refers to, doing things what's right and combat against injustice and doing, fighting against what's wrong action, much like the good Rabbi mentioned as well. And then, of course, jihad of sword, which means, armed fighting in the way of God or something like that, a defensive struggle. Now, unfortunately, what happens is that a lot of the extremists within Islam take that to the next level, and they sort of focus on, this is what jihad is, that we have to fight in the name of God. So that's not okay. So basically, I'm going to talk about jihad in three different ways. I'm going to talk a little bit about historical. I'm going to talk a little bit about what the Holy Quran says about jihad, and then also about in a modern sense. I mean, why is that important? Why do we need to sort of talk about it, right? Historically, basically, and I'm sort of abbreviating, I'm conscious of my 7 minutes, the first time the Muslims ever had to resort to war really was when they were basically being perished by other tribes, neighboring tribes of Mecca and Medina. And at that point, there was a holy war that was sanctioned by the Prophet that we have to sort of defend ourselves. And other wars, of course, were done at that time, basically for the purposes of unifying the tribes, that sort of thing. Those basically had to do with sort of political aspects, religious aspects, that sort of thing. Of course, after the Prophet's death, there was an Islamic state that was established, and of course under Caliph Umar, the military campaigns continued against the Byzantine Empire, the Sasanian Empire, whether these wars were defensive, offensive, it's really subject to interpretation. We could sit here and talk about a lot of that stuff, and we really don't have time to really delve into that. And I personally wasn't there, so I really don't. It's really not significant, and it's not really relevant today. I think what's relevant today is what you can take away from all this, right? So what does Quran say about jihad? Okay, jihad is mentioned 41 times in the Quran, but it never refers actually to fighting, right? I mean, the word for killing and stuff is qatl, and not really jihad. And I will be first to say that Islam is not a pacifist faith, just like our sister faith, Judaism. Just war does exist in Islam, but again, it has to be defensive against persecution and oppression. So there are certain verses, as there are in every holy scripture, that can be twisted, turned, and one of the verses that the extremists sort of use is so-called the verse of the sword. By the way, that is not what the Quran calls it. That's not what the Prophet called it. It is, it is a verse that a lot of extremists use to sort of justify, their ill actions. And this verse basically, let me read it first to you, and I want to read it in context so you understand. Okay, so it's from the Quran 9:5. But when the forbidden months are past, then fight and slay the pagans wherever you find them, and seize them, beleaguer them, and lie in wait for them at every ambush. But if they repent and establish regular prayer and practice regular charity, then open the way for them, for Allah is forgiving, most merciful, right? And then the following verse, which is even more significant than this actual verse, says, however, if amongst the pagans ask thee for protection, then grant it to them, so that he may hear the word of Allah, and then escort him to wherever he can be secure. That is because they are men without knowledge. So basically the whole concept of war, even this defensive war, was that if somebody asks for refuge or somebody does not want to fight, you are obligated as a Muslim to give this person sanction and give this person safe passage, and you're not to force your religion or anything like that. So that's extremely important to talk about that. So what's so important in the modern sense of jihad, right? Why should it matter? Why should we talk about holy war and all that? Well, look, after 9/11, the whole world changed, right? I mean, I wrote a whole chapter in a book about this. And the main thing is that we need to understand that, what's happening really has very, very, very little to do with faith. Actually, it has nothing to do with faith. I mean, if you look at any holy scripture, if you look at any aspect of Islam, really does not sanction that sort of killing of innocents. It just does not happen. So where do we take it from here? It's up to moderate Muslims like myself to sort of talk to you about it. I mean, you listen to me and you say, and actually, if you look at this verse of the sword, so to speak, that could be used against Al-Qaeda. I mean, slay Al-Qaeda wherever you find them, because basically what they're doing is killing innocent people and causing the same sort of oppression that the Quran says should not be caused. So think about it for a minute. I mean, this is what we're talking about. And in that context, the verse becomes quite relevant, that you understand what is it that we're dealing with here. So, that's really very important. What is your role about this? I mean, how can you help? Just like us moderate Muslims, you can say to whoever you meet one day, but hey, I heard a moderate Muslim and they told me about, what the world is all about, how they think about war. So, I mean, we can discuss this further. I know I've got a lot more to talk about, but I understand I'm probably going over, so thank you very much, and I really appreciate you all being here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sid. Our next speaker is George Nakamura. He is a Soka Gakkai Buddhist, and he is the state chairman. He was born in Japan and graduated from Soka University in Tokyo and moved to the United States in the 1980s. He graduated from ASU and has been a member of a Buddhist group, Soka Gakkai International, since whoa, do I really see that right? Wow, that's not possible. Since 1957? Wow, you must have been like one. Oh my gosh. Soka Gakkai International is an organization that promotes peace culture, and education throughout the world based on the Buddhist philosophy. His current position of Soka Gakkai International, USA, is that he is the Southwest Zone leader. He's also a very beloved member of the Arizona Interfaith Movement, and he lives in Phoenix with his wife and his son. Please help me welcome George.
Good morning. I really appreciate Arizona Interfaith Movement to have this kind of meeting for very educational gathering to develop understanding among diversity. And I thought I had 8 minutes? 7 minutes. Okay. Excuse my Japanese accent. I may speak slowly. That way I need 10 minutes. Anyway, I'd like to just explain what SGI organization is all about, especially the history of this organization, and that way you understand where I'm coming from, and then you will understand our view towards war and peace. SGI stands for Soka Gakkai International. This is one of many Buddhist groups, and Soka Gakkai in Japanese, that means Value Creation Society. And we have now members throughout the world in 192 countries and territories. And we have many members practicing Buddhism in Phoenix as well. And originally, the Soka Gakkai organization started in 1930 in Japan. And the founder of this organization is named Makiuchi, who was a Japanese educator back in Japan. And along with his follower, Joseph Toda, both of them started together this organization. Back then, this organization was a group of educators, and they believed that through reforming education, we can change the society. So they found a Buddhist principle that was originated by a Japanese monk called Nichiren, who was born in the 13th century in Japan, who really tried to reform the religious world in Japan, opposing to religious authorities and national authorities, which were manipulating people. So this Nichiren Buddhism's core is believing equality of people, and also effort to empower individuals to change the world. So in 1930, educator Makiuchi found this Buddhism, and he decided to have a group of practitioners of Nichiren Buddhism. Now, because this organization truly believed that through empowering individuals, society can become harmonious and peaceful. And back in 1930, in Japan, if you study history, Japan was actually really looking for natural resources outside of Japan to build a strong economic power and a military power. So they had annexed Korean Peninsula, invading China, and eventually they built. They tried to build the Japanese empire in the China, Philippines, and the Southeast Asian countries. So back in Japan, the Japanese war policy is try to unite the entire Japan to support the war. And the Japanese government called the war Holy War, utilizing the emperor as a god of Japan. And I tried to unify all different religious groups to support the emperors as a god. Therefore, if you don't accept Shintoism, then you become third-class criminals. You'll be arrested and you'll be prosecuted. So this our organization, Soka Gakkai, did not make a compromise with the Japanese government. So about 1940, 1941, membership grew to about 3,000. Most of them are educators. And then 1942, top 11 Soka Gakkai leaders were all arrested by the Japanese government because we did not support the war. Then founder Mann died in a small cell of the prison in 1944. And then the follower, Toda, actually, during the prison time also, he did not make any compromise with the government. So finally, just before Japan surrendered in 1945, he was released from the prison. Actually, this was July 3rd, 1945. And then he found devastation of the country. And not only that, total destruction of the organization. So he immediately started reconstruction of this organization. And throughout, he passed away in 1958. So from 1945 to 1958, Toda's effort is to rebuild this peace organization in Japan and raise next successors among the youth. September 8, 1957, 1 year before his passing, Toda attended a meeting. This is about 5,000 youth gathered together. And Toda made a declaration of abolition of nuclear weapons throughout the world. And his statement was very clear. He said that there's no justification of violence. And he said that whoever used nuclear weapons or atomic bomb, that this is during Cold War. Many countries were testing nuclear weapons, developing weapons in 1950s, 1960s. So 1957, he said whoever used nuclear weapons or atomic bombs are criminal, and the war is criminal activities. So his statement was very clear, and he told those 5,000 youth to carry on this spirit to the future. SGI, current president of SGI, Daisa Ikeda, was one of 5,000 who carried this philosophy of violence and principle of world peace.
1 minute.
1 minute, okay. And then started organization outside of Japan in 1960. That is how SGI in the United States started. Lastly, we just believe the world peace is not going to be accomplished by politics. We know this. How many years we tried. And we truly believe that peace will be built by individual inner transformation. And I think this is what Mahatma Gandhi said. If you want to change the world, you have to change humanity. If you want to change humanity, you have to change yourself. And so this organization really encourages each individual to empower oneself and develop courage and hope to change own environment. And through this grassroots movement, we are really trying to build an unshakable, harmonious, and peaceful society in this world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, George. Our final panelist today, final speaker, is Manbir Wazir. He is a Sikh, and he is a youth leader who was one of 3 young people that Arizona Interfaith Movement had the honor and privilege of sponsoring to attend the TIDE conference this year in Boston. And TIDE stands for Teenage Identity and Diversity Education. Manbir is now at U of A. I was corrected very vehemently by Dr. Paul because I said ASU, so no, he is not at ASU. Manbir is at U of A, and he has just recently graduated from high school. He's now majoring in mathematics and also in the ROTC program and in training for officer in the military. So please help me welcome Manbir.
Hello everybody. I would like to begin with a quote. "Grant me this boon, O Lord. May I never be deterred from good deeds. Without fear may I enter the battlefield. With complete resolve may I bring victory. May my mind be trained to sing your praises. And when the time comes, bring me a valiant death on life's battlefield." Guru Gobind Singh Ji, 10th Guru, Dasam Granth. A Sikh is both a saint and a soldier. One side, a practice of deep meditation, self-discipline, spiritual focus, and tolerance of all people and all faiths. And on the other, a lifestyle duty-bound to act on worldly things, to fight the enemy without hesitation, to defeat and destroy all obstacles that stand in the way of victory. With such black and white ideologies, it is difficult to see an intersection of the two in perfect balance. Nevertheless, this is the goal of all those who practice Sikhism. The balance of midi-pidi, the intertwining of spiritual obligations to oneself and temporal obligations to the world. With this, we have the Sikh warrior. To truly understand the evolution of Sikhs as warriors, one must look back into our history. For over 100 years, after the preachings of the first Guru, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, Sikhs, which in Hindi meant spiritual learner, were hardly accepted as a religion by major faiths of the time, much less thought of as warriors. The words of the first 5 Gurus preached equality between all people, believing that gender, caste, nor faith made one person inferior to the other. Most importantly, their teachers condemned the use of excessive violence or force, and continued to do so long after the creation of the Sikh warrior. Temporal obligation at the time was embodied mostly through hard work and seva, or selfless service to the community, as it still is today. As the followers of Sikhism grew, however, so did the potential danger it posed to the rulers of Punjab, the Mughals. They saw a people that did not respect traditional caste systems as a threat to their power in the region. Their solution was to convert the leader of the Sikhs to Islam and watch his followers abandon the practice altogether. Their target was Guru Arjan Dev Ji, the 5th Guru, through torture by fire and boiling water for 5 days and nights. They sought to crush the Guruji's faith and were denied. He would die a Sikh, and not by the hands of the Mughals. Thus, Guru Arjan Dev Ji became the first martyr of Sikhism, and his son, who would succeed him as Guru Har Gobind Singh Ji, became the first Sikh warrior. It was only with the 10th Guru, the 10th and final human Guru, Sri Guru Gobind Singh Ji, and his creation of the Khalsa, that total war would break out between both the Mughal Empire and the Sikhs of Punjab. These were the stories that you were told as a child. These were the stories that we grew up with. They were stories of martyrs, sacrifice, and a very long war for independence. In these stories depicted gruesome images of torture against Sikhisms, fierce battles where Sikhs were outnumbered 3-1. Yet these stories were not told to us to inspire hatred or fear for those who committed the act. They were told to us to remind us what the Sikhs before us were willing to sacrifice for us to live free and live as Sikhs. It was to remind us how precious it is to pray to whoever we believe, to pray to our beliefs, to hold them dear, and the right of every religion to live free. So, when it comes to the topic of holy war, and as Paul Edminger asked me to do, I will try my best to explain the Sikh doctrine on war. The Sikh doctrine on war is that there is no Sikh doctrine on war. There is but the Sikh doctrine. For every Sikh is a warrior. There is no term for a holy war. Because, actually, let me go back to that. That will be my ending. There is no word that unites all Sikhism together to fight one war. There is no need for it, for there is only one Khalsa that unifies all Sikhs all over the world. There is no term for holy war in Sikhism, for we do not find war holy. War to Sikhs is just a matter of necessity. Sikhs believe in acting on what is just. Therefore, my religion provides me the right to act on just causes. But my justification for those acts is not my religion. My religion does not provide me salvation for the actions I commit. It is on my own conscience, on my own soul, that I have to hold these. Therefore, I have to make those choices based on my own morality, on what I believe is just. And with that, I must create my own clean conscience. My religion simply gives me the ability to do so. So,
1 minute.
For Paul Edminger, I'm sorry that I could not find you the Sikh doctrine no more, but I found you something better. Sikhs are warriors, and we will continue to serve dutifully, not just in armies, as we do in many militaries today, and hopefully soon in the United States military too. But we continue to do our duty to this world by serving our communities through charity and hard work and honesty. So, with that I conclude that the balance between both spiritual and temporal obligations is what defines a Sikh. And with that being said, my name is Manbir Singh Wazir. I am a Sikh, and therefore I am a saint and I am a soldier. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Manbir, and thank you to all of our panelists. And now it is your turn to ask questions. And before we begin the question part, just to set up a few ground rules, this is to ask questions. If you have a monologue, lovingly I invite you to save that for your acting class. And also, if you have a distinct comment to make to one of the panelists, please see them after. They'll be around for a few minutes afterwards. You can go up to them. This time is for questions. If you have a question on anything that was spoken here this afternoon, this is the time to ask questions. And also, we remember lovingly that our purpose in coming together to the Faith Forums is to grow in understanding of each other. And each of these wonderful panelists have given up their time as volunteers today to be here to help us grow in understanding of different faith traditions. So, with that said, I did see a question over here.
Yes, I see we have nobody representing any of the mainline denominations. We can use that term. Some call it the old line denominations. Catholic, Presbyterian, Methodist, UCC, Lutheran, and so on. And they all have adopted, at the national level, the just war theory. I haven't heard it used. Can any of the panelists explain what the just war theory is? You can Google it if we don't get the answers right here.
Thank you for that. And one of the reasons we don't have as many panelists, or well, we don't have, because we do have a limited amount of time, so we chose panelists that we were able to be graced with for today's presentation. So just war, does anyone have, yes, Manbir.
Thank you. Well, in Sikhism, we do not use the term holy war because we do not find war holy in any sense. But there is just cause in war from time to time. Sikhism always plays down on our acts to help our own desires. And in terms of, if you put this in terms of a country, that might be to grab land, to enslave people, or to gain power in a region. But for just war, in Sikh faith, our war to liberate Punjab from the Mughal rulers was considered to be a just war, because under the Mughals' reign, they sought to eradicate Sikhism altogether. Not just Sikhism, but also Hinduism. And even one of our Gurujis, the 9th Guru, Guru Tegh Bahadur, died defending the Hindus. He was beheaded, the 10th Guru was beheaded for his act and given back to his son, who became our 10th and final human Guru. So, in that sense, the fight for freedom to live as we wish is just. But I think that using the term just war is always something we must be wary of. So I don't use the term just war because you can look at it in any way. You can take it down a piece apart. There is almost very few instances in history where you have the right to call it a just war, because there is so many other alternatives.
Do any of other
Yeah, I didn't use the term just war, but I thought I had outlined the Jewish concept of a righteous war. And I'm not sure exactly what the term just implies completely. Righteous, I would say, goes beyond just. I think just means that it's okay to do it. You have a right to do it. I'm going beyond that, and I'm saying two kinds of war. War of self-defense of the innocent who are being oppressed is righteous. And that is to say, if one participates in that, it's not just that he didn't do something wrong, but he did something noble. Beyond that, there's the concept of war against someone who's evil, wicked, like Hitler, Nazism, which seeks to destroy all elements of humanity, the oppression. And there we are obligated to fight that war, and whoever does so, you could use the word just, but it's beyond just. One who is involved in defeating that is fulfilling the will of God and is doing something which is a great, great ideal.
Thank you. Yes, we have another question.
Rabbi, I've noticed a certain slippage in your usage. As we know, it's not talks about peoples, but sometimes translated as nations. But as we also know, the nations we have today, nation states, are nothing like those ancient nations. And as a matter of fact, the Holy One condemned Israel when they saw a king.
What is your question, sir? Sorry. Thank you.
Okay. I wonder if you could comment on your view on modern warfare between nation states, like, say, America, that is comprised of many people, many peoples, many nations in the traditional sense, and other nation states.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's possible to take the basic ideas and to apply them to contemporary America. And America, too, would be judged by the same standards as to whether the war they're engaged in is for righteous purposes or merely for self-aggrandizement and conquest. If it's just for conquest to be the ruler, then it's an illegitimate war. But, so let's take, for example, World War II. Attack by Japan, self-defense, attack, and then Hitler joined in. But beyond the self-defense aspect, the fact that America was instrumental in destroying the evil regime of the Nazis, in my opinion, puts it on the category of being a noble war. You could debate, I'm not going to say you could debate cases like Vietnam and so on and so forth, which are not that clear-cut. It's not that clear-cut, so I'm not taking a stand. You can make the case that that was part of the domino theory, and we were defending ourselves against the successor to Hitler, which was the communist empire. But again, if it's clear, if it is clear that this is a war of self-defense, or of defending, it doesn't only have to be us. If there are oppressed people that are being slaughtered, just like the Jews were slaughtered, and there's nobody to defend them, and we come to their defense, that too would be characterized, in my opinion, in the contemporary world, and sometimes we could use more of that as a just war, using just war, again, a righteous war.
I'm addressing this question to the rabbi. You used the expression, I don't even remember the context, you said Nazis, communists, and other atheist-leaning movements or something. Did you mean to imply that atheists were the same kind of, can you explain what you meant by that?
Yeah.
Thank you for your question.
Yes, I'm glad you asked that question. Judaism would not go to war and would not justify killing someone simply because he's an atheist. We don't seek to impose religious views on anybody. We don't seek converts. In fact, when people come to convert, our initial reaction is to sort of discourage them. Because we tell them all the troubles that the Jews have faced throughout history. So are you sure you want to join us? But see, I just mentioned that it had, as a side point, if it's an evil regime, even if it's based on some kind of a religious doctrine, but if it's practicing evil, then it's evil, and you have to defeat it. At the same time, if a country should be completely atheist, we wouldn't go to war. There's nothing, we wouldn't regard that as being intrinsically evil. It's the fact that the communist regime, which happened to be atheistic, but it was an aggressive regime, seeking to oppress everybody. The same is true with the Nazis. So it wasn't, again, the reason why it becomes a righteous war is because it's defeating an evil regime which seeks to destroy people and to oppress the innocent, not because they're atheists.
It seems to me that there, and I'd like you to comment on this, the difference between a war where you're fighting fighting an army that stands for a country, a nation that is communistic or is Hitler. And compare that to today, where we are fighting terrorism, which leads to people in everyday clothes on the street. I know one American soldier is still grieving over shooting a 12-year-old that he thought was reaching for a gun. And I just would like you to comment on the difference in today's world between fighting nations and fighting terrorism.
Thank you. Was your question addressed to any particular panelists or whoever? Okay, thank you very much.
I think I'd like to take that question. I think it's an excellent question, by the way. And, you know, war in itself is a very sort of dangerous concept because one person is just war, maybe another person is war of oppression. And we need to be very careful about that. There are lots of, you know, examples in history that has occurred. And I'm not, you know, taking sides, I'm not saying who's right, who's wrong, but I just think all war is wrong, period, unless it's a war of last resort, which you're doing in order not to be perished. And I think that's an important distinction needs to be made there. Now, as far as terrorism is concerned, I don't think that there's any faith or any type of people that would say that it is not inherently evil and it's not inherently wrong. I think every single faith represented here and other faiths and no faith, you know, atheists who don't believe in you know, any particular God, so to speak, would also, you know, would say the same thing, that is inherently evil, it's wrong to, you know, hurt and kill people. So in that sense, in the modern day, you know, I think it's very, very important for us to recognize that terrorism is something that is, you know, inherently evil and needs to be defeated at all costs. I think it's particularly incumbent upon us Muslims, and I can speak to that from a Muslim perspective, that, you know, that we come out and we say, hey, this is not in the name of our faith we're going to do this, because this is actually wrong, not only, you know, from a Muslim perspective, from a scriptural perspective, but from a common sense perspective. You know, you do not go and, you know, ram planes into buildings killing innocent people. That is just wrong. And you do not lob, you know, missiles, you know, over the border, killing innocent people in Israel. That is wrong. I mean, that's something that should not happen. At the same token, you know, you don't go carpet bomb other, you know, countries and destroy innocent children. And, I mean, you know, where do you kind of draw the line? I mean, that you draw the line, reasonableness, I think is where the line needs to be drawn. And reasonableness is sit down together, end the stupidity of war, and resolve these things, and things that are hurting all of us in a common way, those need to end. And I don't care whether you're, you know, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, or Martian. I mean, the same thing applies to every people. So,
I just want to say something too, because I was really touched by what he said. And I know I'm not on the panel, but I am because I'm the moderator. And that just really struck me just there. The fact that we're all here having this discussion about war, and we're doing it peacefully, brings tears to my eyes. Imagine for a moment all of the world being able to do this, and the immense power that is in this room because we are here, able to sit down and listen to each other's views. Imagine that, just expanding throughout the world. Doesn't that give you just a warm, wonderful feeling? And I know you want to respond too, so I'm sending it over. I have to have my touchy feeling on it there.
Well, I would like to provide an answer that is not solely based on my religion, because even at a young age I've studied many wars, and I think the biggest distinction between a war of nations and a war on terror is that there's no border lines. There's no specific area where you can find these people. There's no way you can distinct terrorists from maybe an army. Even if we consider the Geneva Convention, where soldiers have to wear uniforms, when it comes down to the topic of total war, those rules don't really apply. It is to win. And sometimes we like to consider terrorists, extremists, especially from our side as a very big nation being attacked by a very small minority group in a very major faith. And I believe Sid Sharif will agree with me on this, is that terrorists come from more than just religions. They come from ideals. They come from within political and economic diversity that we would never truly comprehend. And I think that when we say that terrorism is wrong, we're also being slightly hypocritical, because at one time the U.S. was, the colonies as we were considered little rebel terrorists. Maybe not, the word had not maybe formed by then. And I can speak from my heritage that the Indian people who sought independence from the British Empire were considered terrorists. Yet when we talk about either the rebels of the colonies of the Americas, or when I talk about the heritage of Indian independence, I don't consider them terrorists. So I guess the view of terrorism is always placed by the bigger man. But I would have to say that, that war is war, in whether it's fighting a very small extremist group, regardless of faith, or fighting a nation, though the game is still the same. So it's a very cold reality, and I do not like to tell you this very coldly, and I do not accept the actions of Al-Qaeda or their justification for these acts. But I think that we must understand in its entirety that war is very ugly, even uglier and is ugly on every scale, small and big.
We have time for one more quick question.
I just wanted to respond quickly. I'll try to be quick. I think that the country, this is very relevant. We're facing an issue, the issue you raised, the difference between fighting terrorists and between fighting nation states. We're actually dealing with this issue right now, and that is the problem of Iran. What does Israel do? They are racing to get a nuclear weapon. They've made it very, very clear. They deny the Holocaust. They've made it very, very clear. Ahmadinejad made it very clear that the objective is to annihilate the state of Israel. That's what Nasser made clear many years ago, that our goal in the Six-Day War is to throw the Jews into the sea. Now you're the Prime Minister of Israel. What are you supposed to do? Do you have to wait until they've attained it, and then they're about to send it, and then you have a right to maybe fight back? Well, I mentioned before, Judaism maintains if someone is coming to kill you, get up and kill him first. That's called preemptive. Now, Menachem Begin did that by bombing the nuclear reactor of Iraq in 1981, Asarak. At that time, every nation condemned Israel, including the United States. However, in the first Gulf War, when they went to war, and it was Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney then sent a letter to the commander of the Israeli Air Force, who had ordered the strike, carried out the strike, congratulating him, thanking him, because God forbid if they had the bomb at that point of time, it would have made a world of difference. So here's a question. According to Judaism, the doctrine of self-defense of the innocents, when someone is coming to kill you, and unfortunately they did not have an Israeli army before Hitler came to power, or in those days, get out and kill him first. What will the United States do? Are we going to wait? Are we going to allow him to get the weapon? Or do we have a right to go in and strike first to prevent him from doing so?
Okay.
I have heard several of you say something about the agony of being forced to commit the crime of violence, of unholy act. I have not heard a clear reference of the last resort. What is our obligation obligation to find other sources, to other ways of finding solutions. How active do we have to be in this? I'm only hearing your judgment on war, but what is the alternative?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That's a perfect question to end with, and I'd love to hear from George or from Clayton, who have not had a chance to respond at all to any of our questions.
Thank you. I feel that the people are looking at the society very simplified way. It's like a Hollywood movie. You have a bad guy come out, and a really bad guy, you have to eliminate it. And a good guy comes up, and finally, through a struggle, finally bad guy is killed and gone, then happy end. The current society that we live in is not that simple. You know, and when if terrorists are gone, if we can just kill all terrorists, and then do you guarantee that we have a peaceful society? To me, I don't think so. That the feeling of hatred has been rooted in the society. That is the cause. Buddhism is looking at the inner world, inside. People's inside have to change. Otherwise, no matter how your outside changes, same thing will be happening over and over and over. And so we really believe that the inner transformation, we call human revolution, will impact the world. And overcoming hatred, overcoming fear, and developing courage and compassion, and look at the people, even enemy, as a human being, and the courage to try to conduct dialogue with those different people. That kind of a painstaking effort have to be done. And if people keep avoiding dialogue with the people, those who you have hard time with, then there is no more peace at all. And I really feel that this is the word that I love. Think globally, but act locally. How about your daily life? We can talk about world peace. But about your relations with your neighbors, about the families, your friends, do you have a peaceful, harmonious relationship with this? This immediate environment. That is what the Buddhism is looking at. You look at your immediate environment. Let's work on this. Develop harmonious environment, and that should impact the societies. So yes, alternative way, but there's no way other than changing own life, own insight. That's what our Buddhism look at.
Thank you. No, just Clayton, sorry, then we have to end.
I was struck by our mentality. What our culture does to us is that ever since we've been born, even from the scriptures, there's always a good guy and a bad guy. And we really are obsessed with the concept of, if I'm right, then if you disagree with me, you're wrong. And I guess my own pilgrimage is to move away from that, is that there's a bunch of good and bad in all of us. If I were to ask my friends from a heritage that's black from Africa, how in God's name would they say a person that came to America from England could be a good guy? How in God's name could any Native American that's been here for thousands of years think of any European person as being a good guy? And we sort of assume all of this. And I'll even go back to the Second World War. We like to start there. My question is, and I don't know if you know anything about Herbert Hoover, our president who was president at the wrong time, when the Depression hit, so we're going to kick him out because if you don't solve the economic problems. But I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but Hoover saved whatever the death toll of the Second World War to the Jews and all of the people, the handicapped, etc. He said, and I'm not minimizing that, But Hoover saved over 12 million Russians by the support that we gave to them. We don't even see him as a hero, you know. And having been to the Holocaust Museum just recently in Washington, I mean, it's just terrible. But has anybody ever thought about the fact that if we would have had something like the Marshall Plan after the First World War, maybe it would have been the Hoover Plan? I am here to say that, as we discussed it from that point of view, it wouldn't have been possible for Hitler to rise if we would have treated Germany after the First World War with what do we know about? The Golden Rule. And my concern is not to everybody to think like me, but let's go back to sources and you know, not in the middle and say, well, now he's good and now he's bad. So I guess I come back and I look at my own part of Christianity. And I've got some of these here if you wanted to take a look at them. There's a gentleman by the name of Michael Hart who in the 70s and the 90s identified the 100 most influential people throughout the world for all time. He didn't come at it from a specific point of view, but just laid those in second. And he puts Christ in third place and said he would be first if we would have applied what he presented as his only distinct view out of the New Testament. You have heard that it's been said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them that despitefully use you and persecute you. I'm simply saying that the truth is that part has not been followed. In fact, it's not even generally accepted. Most Christians consider the injunction to love your enemy is at most an ideal which must be realized in some perfect world, but one which is not a reasonable guide to contact in the actual world in which we live. We do not normally practice it, nor to expect others to practice it, and we don't teach our children to practice. Jesus' most distinctive teaching, therefore, remains an intriguing but basically untried suggestion. I just put that out as a place that I am at the place, I'm 78 years old now, and somewhere along the line with my friends, I refuse to be a part of a question and answer period. I want to be a part of a question and question period. And that's what I think this is all about, and why I'm so thrilled to be a part of this group, that we can do that.
I can see Dr. Paul getting very antsy. He wants to get up, and so my hands are tied for any further questions or responses. My final comment for the day is the words of John Lennon, imagine. Think of the song, imagine. Thank you, thank you, thank you to all of our panelists. Let's give them another round of applause. Our next forum will be on excommunication. Dr. Paul will share the date with you, please. If you have enjoyed today, if it's been beneficial to you, bring your friends. Bring your enemies, in case you have any, and let's open up space, dialogue, and begin to imagine together. Namaste, blessings and love to each of you. I must leave very quickly because I have another commitment today. So thank you very much.
Let's say thank you. Okay, just a couple of closing comments, remarks. First of all, today is
your mic.
Now can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Today is, as Sid said, is Eid, a high holy day of the Islam faith, and from the Arizona Interfaith Movement, we need to apologize for having a program on a high holy day. And thanks Sid very much for breaking out. We tried to get all kinds of different Muslim leaders to speak to this issue. No, we can't. It's Eid. We cannot. No. It's our Christmas, it's our Easter, it's our whatever it is. But Sid, thank you. Thank you. Some of you know that I am a Baptist. God help me. Which one? American Baptist. Right. Yeah, which one? That's a good question. But I am delighted today, friends, that we have in our midst today
lady who, until a couple of months ago, was the head of all of Baptists in Germany, East, West Germany, and all of Germany. That's like saying she was the bishop, she was the archbishop, whatever word you want to use. And I don't even remember your first name. Regina. Regina Klaus, we'd like for you to stand. Welcome. She was here just for a couple of months vacation, staying with a very good friend of ours, and who is also a Baptist, by the way. And so we welcome her today. Now let me just say, and Mitzi, whenever you have to leave,
Yes,
it's okay for you. You've all received this kind of a page this morning when you came in. Let me simply lift up, as Mitzi mentioned, a month from now, on November the 19th, is our next faith forum. And the topic there is excommunication. And it's I don't know how, this is a topic of war. We can get to that. But what do you have to do to get kicked out of your religion? If you're Jewish or Buddhist or Muslim or Sikh or Mennonite, and what do you have to do for them to kick you out, say you don't belong here anymore? I don't know. We're going to have a marvelous faith forum a month from now, November 19th. You can see about it in this sheet. Also, let me just mention that next spring, March the 25th, is our faith forum. It is our Golden Rule Banquet, a Golden Rule Banquet, where we are going to be honoring 6 people who are living out the Golden Rule in the midst of war, in the midst of crime, in the midst of thievery, in the midst of all kinds of things. There are some people who are living out doing unto others as you never do unto you. So we're going to be honoring those people, and you can see about it on this sheet. Let me also mention that in just a couple of weeks is our Experience Interfaith. This is an amazing experience. The Sikh faith will be providing the food in their tradition. They always sit on the floor when they worship. There's no pulpit, there's no platform, there's no choir loft, there's no nothing like that. Everybody sits on the floor to show that everybody's equal. They have their marvelous dinner, lungar, and everybody sits on the floor. So at this event, we will have 500 or 600 people sitting on the floor being served incredible food from the Sikh community. And we need to say, in their Gurdwara, in their church, in their Gurdwara down here, just a few blocks from here, they've got a half dozen people or so that own some of these high-priced Indian restaurants. They are providing the food. So we say that simply so you'll know it's not some little old guy out in the backyard with a tub stirring up a brew. These marvelous restaurants are providing the food. We'll sit on the floor and we'll have some tables and chairs for elderly or infirm. But we want to invite all of you to come. Be a part of that lungar dinner. Then we break into small groups of about 6 each, and we say, don't sit with the people that you came with, because we don't want a group of Christians here, and a group of Muslims here, and a group of Buddhists here. We'll be all mixed up. And then we'll have open discussion on marvelous topics. We won't be talking about, ASU or U of A. Oh, there's no question. U of A is going to win the football game this year.
Yes.
But we're not going to be talking about football. We're going to be talking about critical issues. And the Hindu will say, well, from my Hindu faith, this is the way we believe. From the Buddhist faith, it's a great time. So make arrangements, make reservations to be at this event. Now also, today we have incredible cookies that have been brought. There are some which are Halloween, red and black, and then there are some that are chocolate. And we want to say, hands off of the chocolate. We take these back to the office.
That's kosher.
Come and have cookies. If you want to buy books, we have books. We've talked about before. 15 bucks a piece, or all three of them for, I think, for 40 bucks, something like that. For you that have not received one of these calendars before, Holy Days of 2013, as we are speaking right here now, 2014 calendars were delivered to our office, and so we'll have them for you next month. Sorry we didn't get them this morning, but we'd have them for you now. But we have these things. These are free. We have to charge for the books. But thank you all for coming, and thank you, I forget your name, that brought the cookies? Michelle.
Oh, you're our hero.
From the Unity Church.